thank you very much for the opportunity to come to OLA and to talk about such a painful subject. It is, as Michael mentioned, in Brazil, because of finally the approval of information access law, you can no longer deny access to information regarding violations of human rights on national security grounds. This is the good news. I started the good news, and now we are going to go downhill. Because you can't use this to prosecute people that committed human rights violations in Brazil, period. You cannot do that because in April 2010, the Supreme Court of Brazil reaffirmed the validity of the 1979 amnesty law. The justice that reported the majority opinion, Woodrow, then justice, was a law professor, is a former law professor, was a militant of the Brazilian Communist Party. He was arrested in the 70s, and he was tortured. So, a former victim of torture, which becomes a member of the Brazilian Supreme Court in the key moment when we could have changed the course of history in Brazil and reverse course and basically go against a culture of impunity that exists in Brazil and that makes the building up of a democracy very difficult. This gentleman reaffirmed the validity of the amnesty law. The amnesty law in Brazil is the result of a major political compromise. It was, by the way, drafted with the help of the Brazilian Bar Association, which is the same bar association that in 2010 was asking the Supreme Court to reverse this aspect of the law, which covers not only the people that were in the opposition to the military regime, but the related crimes. And that you cover every torturer in the neighborhood, including the one that we know that tortured the lady that is currently the president of Brazil. So that is what makes this so complicated. The decision by the court finding Brazil completely out of compliance with its obligation under the convention, therefore, has no application in Brazil, because it is the Supreme Court in Brazil that internalizes such decision, as it is the executive in Brazil that internalizes, for instance, Security Council decisions on sanctions against Iran. Brazil voted against the sanctions, but imposed the sanctions. It took an act by the executive of Brazil to decide we are going to put sanctions on Iran because we are a member of the Security Council. Why would not the same? Because there is separation of power. The Supreme Court decided the way it decided, and even one of the justices, it was a 7-2 vote, one of the justices, in his opinion, wrote that in any case this would not apply because no decision by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights that related to events that took place before Brazil's ratification of the convention has validity in Brazil. Okay. Just going back, amnesty law. People that supported this compromise, this grand political compromise that allowed Brazil to reopen a democratic chapter. This happened in 1979. It took 6 more years for Brazil to get a civilian president. It took another 3 years to get a new constitution. Who are the people leaders that supported? For those that may not be familiar, some names you will identify. Tancredo Neves, senator, first civilian president of Brazil, indirectly elected, but very much part of this compromise where the military would go back to the barracks and the civilian would take power. Relevant names: Ulisses Guimarães, president of the opposition party, a great congressman in Brazil. Franco Montoro would be later governor of the state of São Paulo. All of them lawyers, by the way. The non-lawyer sociologist Fernando Henrique Cardoso, absolutely in support of this compromise. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Dilma Rousseff, they all supported this compromise. I don't know, and I believe personally, knowing some of them, that intellectually, in intellectual and moral grounds, they completely understand that you should not give amnesty to people that tortured people on behalf of the state. But that's the decision was made in a political context, there was a compromise, and this is the compromise. And so, how will that evolve? I believe that the introduction of the new law of access to information, together with the creation of the Truth Commission, which happened at the same time, offers probably an opportunity. The first human rights minister for Lula, Nilmário Miranda, who is back in Congress, is a Workers' Party congressman, federal congressman, said recently, people were talking about this in the Brazilian media, and Nilmário said something that is correct. There is no clamor in Brazil, popular clamor in Brazil, to have this issue revisited, with or without the Inter-American Human Rights Court, which, by the way, most people don't know. Only 20 or 25% of Brazilians know what the OAS is. Okay, this is a recent poll that we presented, among other information that was now, President Dilma Rousseff recently signed into law the two new important things. Actually, it's a very important victory, legislative victory for her. Both Cardoso started this process by recognizing the responsibility of the state to the violations, and actually started a process of paying some monetary compensation. So the responsibility of the state to the crime were absolutely established. Okay, I think Dilma did something important, which was to fight for the Truth Commission, to fight for the law, the information accessibility law. Obviously, she is more involved in this. She is more serious about this for obvious reasons. The law on access to information, it opens every archive in Brazil, in every government, at every level, the three branches, with one exception that I find curious, not in cities with less than 10,000 people. So I was curious when I read that, I said, why is that there?
That's in the law?
Yes. It doesn't apply to, because you have archives all over the place, right? They establish a new process of classification of information, which is three, basically. There is the reserved, which is for 5, you can keep it for 5 years. And the date, apply the date of the document plus 5 years. Then you have the secret, which is 10 years, and then you have the ultra secret. And the ultra secret ones can be renewed for 25 years, and then those can be renewed for another 25. Two former presidents of Brazil, José Sarney, who replaced Tancredo Neves. Tancredo Neves never took power, he died before inauguration, or He died a few days before inauguration, after inauguration, but he could not become president. He was succeeded by the vice president, by the way, until 6 months before, he was the president of the party that supported the dictatorship. So we don't need Garcia Marquez in Brazil. We produce our own novels in reality. And Sarney and his successor, Collor de Mello, fought in Congress, they are now both senators, to have certain information kept secret in perpetuity. That was, thank God, defeated. We will not have that. Problem in the implementation of this law is to put together the methods and the teams and the experts, etc., that will allow the government to do what you guys do, right? You have to classify. Foreign ministry has more or less a transparent system. But in the other areas of the government, this has never been sort of part of people's universe. Like I'd like to say that, for instance, in the United States, you show power by giving information, giving out information. In Brazil, you show power by keeping it. You know, I think it applies for most countries in the region. The way to show power is not to give information. Here you give information precisely so that you have it, and you are powerful and influential. How this is going to be executed, I think, remains big question marks. There are talented young lawyers in Brazil, prosecutors, university professors, good public servants that are involved in this, but this will require a lot of effort. And this is also being discussed. Historians and others say, okay, it's nice how we are going to provide the access. Some things are already happening. Ministries they don't need to wait for an order. Itamaraty just recently released some information regarding credits that the Médici government gave to the Pinochet regime in the very early days. There were some lines of credits, etc., to support the regime. What's clear indication of support there. Then some of the reports mix that with Condor operation, which comes later, and of which Brazil has a much smaller participation compared to other countries. Now, so the Truth Commission should help, obviously. The freedom, the access to information law should certainly help the Truth Commission do its work. The Truth Commission was established in the same moment, signed and announced the same moment last month by President Rousseff. The Commission will have 7 commissioners, 14 funcionários, which sounds pretty low, pretty small to me, and they will have 2 years to do their job, starting the moment the commissioners are nominated. They will be chosen by the president. Okay, there is no process, congressional process of approval, etc., etc. She's going to pick them, and that's going to be it. And then they're going to go to work. Obviously, they have a wealth of documents already to work with, and hopefully this new law will help. What could happen here? I think this will happen, obviously, as everything else, in a political environment in which it will depend, in my estimation, very much how will Dilma be doing. She is doing pretty well right now. She is more popular today than she was when she started. People are really cheering for her. And if the economy remains in a growth path, inflation under control, and people are satisfied, I think she will have more space. People in the opposition to Dilma could use very much this Truth Commission to create all kinds of problems. One that, just reading an article today, people from the associated with the military families could very well want to tell their version of the story, and there are indications that they will. And the logic of the amnesty law in Brazil allows that because it's both sides. So Dilma, when she announced the Truth Commission, made it clear this is not about revanchismo, meaning there is not going to be any prosecution here. Let me go back to Nilmário Miranda, his second statement. Assume that Dilma is doing well, that the commission, the Truth Commission, does its work, that we are able to do part of what it needs to be done is a catharsis, because there are mothers and there are sisters and brothers that want news about, especially the 60 people from the Araguaia guerrilla that vanished. They were disappeared, and people want to closure. People want to know what happened, and this is the alleged purpose, the official purpose of this, is to let. And the president said, "Let us. We have to learn our painful history in order to not repeat it. Let's do this." And Dilma has all the credibility in the world to do that, and she always says, "I am not afraid." And then she will describe sometimes in pretty detailed forms the torture that she was subjected to. So there is no doubt about the commitment of this woman to work in this area. Assuming that the Commission will produce in 2 years a wealth of new information, here's Nilmário Miranda again. This may create the clamor in Brazilian society that will restart the discussion, and in a propitious political scenario, will lead to action, to a case, to be revisited by a Supreme Court, and a future Supreme Court may decide it differently. Okay, but this is the parameter. There are other factors that are affecting this. If you want to, in the Q&A, we could talk about this, which has to do with all inter-American things related to Brazil, related especially to the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, which Brazil is actively working to reform. Actively, okay? Because of, I don't think because of this case, because of the other case, which has to do with Belo Monte, the power plant being built in the Amazon. And if you want to talk about that, I just wrote a very, very long piece that will appear in Spain, hopefully in February. And it's complicated. I think that the relationship between Brazil, the OAS, and all its commissions and all the inter-American systems is in a very critical moment. So that's it.